Have you ever spent hours, or even days, thinking about a single decision, only to realize that nothing has changed? Maybe you wanted to start a business, apply for a better job, learn a new skill, tell someone how you truly feel, or finally begin the dream you've been carrying in your heart for years. You were ready to take the first step, but then your mind started asking questions. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I make the wrong decision? What if I'm not smart enough, talented enough, or ready enough? So you waited. You told yourself you'd start tomorrow. Then tomorrow became next week. Next week became next month. And before you knew it, another year had quietly slipped away. The painful truth is this: most dreams don't disappear because people aren't capable of achieving them. They disappear because people spend too much time thinking and not enough time acting. Overthinking feels safe. It convinces us that we're being careful, responsible, and prepared. But many times, it's simply fear wearing the mask of logic. It keeps us trapped in endless planning, endless worrying, and endless waiting. Meanwhile, life continues moving forward. Opportunities come and go. Time never stops. And the future we keep imagining slowly drifts farther away. But what if everything could change with one simple realization? What if the problem was never your lack of talent, your lack of money, or your lack of opportunity? What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the voice inside your own mind? Today's story is about an ordinary man who spent years trapped inside his own thoughts. Every decision became a battle. Every opportunity became another reason to hesitate, until one unexpected lesson helped him break free from the prison he had unknowingly built for himself. That single lesson changed the way he thought, the way he acted, and ultimately, the direction of his entire life. If you've ever struggled with overthinking, if you've ever delayed your dreams because you were waiting for the perfect moment, or if you've ever felt stuck while everyone else seemed to be moving forward, then this story is for you. Stay with me until the very end, because the lesson that transformed one ordinary man's life may be the very lesson that helps you quiet your mind, take your first step, and finally begin creating the future you've always imagined. Chapter 1. The Prison Inside His Mind. Every morning, Daniel woke up with the same promise. Today will be different. He would finally begin writing the business plan he had been thinking about for years. He would send the job application sitting unfinished on his laptop. He would start exercising. He would stop wasting time. But before he could take the first step, another thought appeared. What if this isn't the right decision? Maybe I should do more research first. What if there's a better opportunity waiting? One question became another, then another. Within minutes, his motivation disappeared. Instead of taking action, Daniel opened social media. He watched videos, read articles, compared himself to successful people. Hours passed without him noticing. At the end of the day, he felt exhausted. Not because he had worked hard, but because he had spent the entire day fighting battles inside his own mind. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. His dreams stayed exactly where they had always been, inside his head. Meanwhile, life around him continued moving forward. His friends accepted new jobs, started businesses, learned new skills, built happier lives. Whenever Daniel congratulated them, he smiled on the outside, but deep inside, one painful question echoed through his mind. Why not me? Late one evening, while cleaning his apartment, Daniel found an old notebook hidden inside a drawer. Curious, he opened it. The pages were filled with goals he had written 5 years earlier. Learn a new language, start a business, travel the world, become financially free. He slowly turned each page. Almost every dream was still waiting. Nothing had changed. Only the dates. A heavy silence filled the room. For the first time, Daniel realized something that made his heart sink. He hadn't failed because he lacked talent. He hadn't failed because he lacked opportunity. He had failed because every important decision became trapped inside endless thinking. He had been waiting for certainty before taking action, but certainty never came. He looked out the window as the city lights flickered in the distance. People were still walking. Cars were still moving. Life wasn't waiting for anyone. And suddenly, a simple thought entered his mind. What if overthinking isn't protecting me? What if it's quietly stealing my life? That question stayed with him for the rest of the night. Before going to bed, Daniel opened his notebook one more time. Instead of writing another long list of impossible goals, he wrote a single sentence across a blank page. Thinking has given me enough answers. Tomorrow, I will let action speak. He closed the notebook and placed it beside his bed. For the first time in years, he wasn't searching for the perfect plan. He wasn't waiting for perfect timing. He was simply ready to begin. And although he didn't know it yet, that small decision would become the turning point that changed everything. Chapter 2. The Cost of Waiting. Have you ever noticed how your mind always has one more reason to wait? You tell yourself, I'll start when I know more. I'll begin when I feel confident. Maybe next week will be a better time. At first, those thoughts sound reasonable. They even sound responsible. But what if they're not protecting you? What if they're quietly stealing your future? Daniel didn't realize that for years. He believed he was being careful. He thought that by waiting longer, he'd make better decisions. Instead, he made no decisions at all. One afternoon, while walking through a quiet park, he noticed an elderly man planting small trees. The old man worked slowly. He wasn't in a hurry. He dug a small hole, placed a tiny seedling into the ground, covered it with soil, and moved on to the next one. Daniel couldn't help but ask, "How do you know they'll grow?" The old man smiled. "You don't. I simply give them a chance." Think about that for a moment. How many dreams have you never given a chance? Not because they were impossible, but because you were waiting for certainty. The old man pointed toward a row of tall trees nearby. "I planted those over 20 years ago. If I had waited for the perfect season, the perfect weather, or the perfect day, there would be no trees standing here." Daniel stood there in silence, because deep down, he knew the gardener wasn't talking about trees anymore. He was talking about life. Maybe you've been waiting too. Waiting until you feel ready. Waiting until you're more confident. Waiting until fear disappears. But here's the truth. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes because of action. Every person you admire once took a step without knowing exactly how things would turn out. They moved anyway. Before leaving, the old man gave Daniel one final piece of advice. Stop asking if you'll succeed. Start asking what you'll learn. Those words stayed with Daniel all the way home. That evening, instead of making another perfect plan, he chose one small task he'd been avoiding. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't impressive, but he finished it. For the first time in a long time, he experienced something overthinking could never give him: progress. And that's when Daniel realized something that changed the way he saw his life. The greatest cost of waiting isn't losing time. It's losing the person you could have become if you had simply started. So let me ask you one question. What is one small step you can take today instead of waiting for tomorrow? Chapter 3. The moment everything changed. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that the more you think about a problem, the bigger it seems? A simple decisión becomes complicated. A small risk feels enormous, and before long, you convince yourself that doing nothing is the safest choice. That's exactly where Daniel found himself. But this time, something was different. Instead of spending hours inside his own head, he decided to try something simple. Whenever he caught himself overthinking, he gave himself just 5 minutes. 5 minutes to think. 5 minutes to gather the facts. And when the timer ended, he had to make a decision. No more endless debating. No more searching for the perfect answer. Just one choice. At first, it felt uncomfortable. His mind kept whispering, "What if you're making a mistake?" But Daniel finally understood something important. Not making a decision was also a decision. And most of the time, it was the worst one. So he started small. He replied to the email he had been avoiding. He signed up for the online course he had been researching for months. He made the phone call he kept postponing. None of those actions changed his life overnight, But something inside him began to change. Every small decision made the next one a little easier. Slowly, his confidence started growing, not because life became easier, but because he was proving to himself that he could act even when he felt uncertain. Think about a child learning to walk. They don't wait until they're sure they won't fall. They stand up, they stumble, they fall, then they try again. If children waited for certainty, none of us would ever learn to walk. The same is true in life. You don't become confident and then take action. You take action, and confidence follows. Daniel began noticing something else. Most of the fears that kept him awake at night never actually happened. The mistakes he imagined, the embarrassment he feared, the failure he expected, they existed only inside his mind. And that's when he realized a powerful truth. Your imagination can become your greatest enemy if you allow fear to write the story. So let me ask you something. How many opportunities have you lost because of problems that never even existed? How many dreams are still waiting? Because you've been asking yourself, what if it goes wrong? Maybe it's time to ask a different question. What if it goes right? What if one small decision today leads to a completely different life tomorrow? That evening, Daniel wrote another sentence in his notebook. Action doesn't eliminate fear. It proves that fear doesn't have to control me. He closed the notebook with a smile. For the first time in years, his future no longer felt like something to think about. It felt like something he was finally creating. And perhaps that's exactly where your own transformation begins. Not with a perfect plan, not with perfect confidence, but with one small decision made today. Chapter 4. The battle inside your mind. Have you ever noticed that your biggest challenge isn't the world around you? It's the conversation happening inside your own mind? One voice tells you to keep going. The other tells you to quit. One voice reminds you of your dreams. The other reminds you of your fears. Every single day, those two voices compete for your attention. Daniel understood this better than anyone. As the weeks passed, he became more consistent. He was making progress. He was completing the tasks he used to avoid. But something surprised him. Overthinking didn't disappear. It simply became quieter. One morning, his alarm rang. He opened his eyes and immediately heard that familiar voice. You're tired today. Missing one day won't matter. You can always start again tomorrow. Have you ever heard those same excuses? They sound harmless. They sound reasonable. But if you listen to them often enough, they slowly become your lifestyle. For a few minutes, Daniel lay in bed. He almost believed those thoughts. Then he remembered something. Your mind doesn't always tell you what's best. Sometimes, it only tells you what's comfortable. And comfort has a dangerous habit. It keeps you exactly where you are. So instead of arguing with his thoughts, Daniel did something different. He stood up anyway. He put on his shoes. He didn't wait for motivation. He chose action. As he finished his morning routine, he realized something powerful. Motivation comes and goes. Some days you'll feel unstoppable. Other days you'll feel tired, distracted, or discouraged. If your actions depend on your feelings, your progress will always be unpredictable. But discipline is different. Discipline shows up on the days motivation doesn't. That's why successful people aren't successful because they're always motivated. They're successful because they've learned to act even when they don't feel like it. Think about that. How many opportunities have you missed because you were waiting to feel ready? The truth is, you may never feel completely ready. And that's okay. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move forward despite it. Daniel slowly stopped asking himself, do I feel like doing this? Instead, he asked a much better question. Who do I want to become? Every decision became a vote for his future. Every workout made him stronger. Every book made him wiser. Every promise he kept made him trust himself a little more. And that's when his life truly began to change. Not because everything became easy, but because he stopped letting his emotions make his decisions. So let me ask you something. Who is making your choices today? Your dreams or your excuses? Because every decision you make is shaping the person you'll become tomorrow. Remember this. You don't build a better life in one extraordinary moment. You build it through ordinary choices. Repeat it every single day. And maybe the next choice you make will be the one that changes everything. Chapter 5. The choice that changes everything. Before we end this story, let me ask you one final question. What kind of life do you want to look back on? A life filled with dreams or a life filled with excuses? Most people believe that success belongs to the smartest, the luckiest, or the most talented. But if you look closely at the people who achieve great things, you'll notice something different. They aren't fearless. They aren't perfect. They simply decide to keep moving. Daniel eventually understood this. Months passed, then years. His life wasn't perfect. He still faced setbacks. He still made mistakes. He still had days when fear tried to convince him to stop. The difference was this: he no longer allowed fear to make his decisions. One afternoon, Daniel was invited to speak to a group of young people. Many of them were struggling with the same problem that had once controlled his life: overthinking, waiting, doubting themselves. After sharing his story, one student raised a hand. "What's the secret?" he asked. "How do I stop overthinking?" Daniel smiled. He remembered asking that same question years earlier. He took a deep breath and replied, "You don't stop overthinking by finding the perfect answer. You stop overthinking by taking the next small step." The room became quiet. Then Daniel picked up a single pebble from the ground. Holding it in his hand, he said, "No one can move a mountain in one day, but anyone can move one small stone. And if you keep moving one stone every single day, one day the mountain will no longer be there." Think about your own life for a moment. What's the mountain standing in front of you? Is it fear, self-doubt, a dream you've been postponing, or a decision you've been afraid to make? Whatever it is, you don't have to climb the entire mountain today. You only have to take the next step. That's how every meaningful journey begins. Not with confidence, not with certainty, but with courage. As Daniel walked home that evening, he smiled. Not because he had reached the end of his journey, but because he knew growth never truly ends. There will always be another lesson, another challenge, another opportunity to become a better version of yourself. And that's the beauty of life. You don't have to be perfect. You only have to keep moving forward. So before this story ends, I want to leave you with one simple challenge. Don't spend today thinking about changing your life. Spend today changing one small part of it. Send the message. Read the first page. Take the walk. Make the call. Begin. Because years from now, you won't remember the day you kept waiting. You'll remember the day you finally started. Thank you for listening. If this story encouraged you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And remember, your future isn't created by the thoughts you keep inside your mind. It's created by the actions you choose to take. Starting today. The end. Before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought. If this story made you stop and reflect, don't let it become just another video you watched today. Let it become the reason you take your first step. Remember, you don't have to change your entire life overnight. You only need to make one small decision, one small action, then another tomorrow. Because that's how real change happens. Not in giant leaps, but in small, consistent steps. If you enjoyed this story and found it meaningful, please take a moment to support the channel. Like this video, subscribe to Mind Mastery Audiobook, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next motivational story or audiobook. Every week, we share inspiring stories designed to help you build better habits, strengthen your mindset, and become the best version of yourself. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's one goal you've been overthinking? And what's the very first step you'll take today? Share your answer in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to begin their own journey. Thank you for spending your time with me. Until our next story, keep learning, keep growing, keep mastering your mind. And always remember, your future isn't waiting for tomorrow. It's being created by the choices you make today.